Welcome back to Big Bookie, presented by Big Banter Sports. We are your home for anything and everything Big Ten football and basketball. And for this week, we've got a good slate. We have everybody here. It feels like it's been a few weeks since we've had everybody on for Big Bookie, but this week we've got a loaded slate. We've got everybody back. I'm excited for the picks. To kick us off, we've got an in-conference matchup, obviously. We have Rutgers, the Scarlet Knights. They are heading into enemy territory, heading into Bloomington. And we've got a 5-point spread, Rutgers favorite. I think this should be a pretty good game. I don't know if there's going to be a lot of national eyes on it, but of course we're going to cover it because it's got to be Big Ten football. So, Brandon, let's start with you. How are you feeling about this game?
Of course, we know that this year Rutgers is not the same old Rutgers. Last week was tough for a little while for them. They didn't cover the spread, and Michigan State looked like for most of the game they had it in the bag, but Rutgers pulled it out. And Indiana, man, their offense is just not capable, I think, of keeping up with Rutgers. Rutgers' defense is actually, I think, top 15 in the country in points allowed per game. Pair that with Indiana's very mediocre offense, I think Rutgers covers that 5-point spread.
Yeah, I did have to eat a few of my words from last week. Rutgers did not become my savior in Scarlet Knight. They did not cover, but Chris, I'd love to hear how you're feeling about this week's game.
Yeah, interesting matchup. This is one for me that I would probably stay away from. If I had to pick it, I kind of would actually lean Indiana purely for the fact it's going to be pretty poor weather, kind of ugly weather going into Indiana. I know Indiana's not been very good this year, and on paper, Rutgers is a better team, but I do like the fact that only 23% of the public is on Indiana. Interestingly enough, they're similar on total yards. Rutgers is at 328 per game and Indiana's at 317. So maybe the offenses aren't as glaring as maybe the points would say they are, or how it's looked so far. And Indiana's strength of schedule has been a little bit more difficult. They're able to hang with Louisville. Again, not a bet I would feel super confident in, but kind of feels a little bit like a trap line to me with Rutgers at 5. I felt like Michigan State kind of bailed them out last week on some of those special teams plays more than maybe Rutgers really went out and beat up on those guys. So if I had to pick it, I would actually lean Indiana.
Interesting take. I love to hear it because I don't think a lot of America would put any money behind Indiana. Brant, how are you feeling about this game?
Yeah, first off, I just want to say I'm glad we're getting some differing takes here because I know our last few shows we've all been kind of
Yeah,
on the same
yeah,
thing.
it's been rough.
It's been
It's been
it's
rough.
been just boring, bland. Not this week, fellas. Big Ten football is back, and it's back in full swing. It's going to be fun. One big thing for Rutgers: they win this game, they're going bowling. That's going to be their first 6-win season, and I mean, I don't even want to scroll back however far it takes me to get up to the last time they won 6 games. But I think the team's going to come out motivated. That being said, they're going to a very hostile environment in Bloomington. I went there for the Ohio State game, and the entire crowd was gone by halftime, and Indiana was only down by like 3 points. So that, I mean, when I say hostile, I mean that crowd doesn't actually exist. You might as well play in a high school stadium with no fans. This it might be worse than Northwestern. It really might be worse than Northwestern, and that's also saying something because James Franklin made his guys practice with no sound, no music when they were prepping for Northwestern. So give me Rutgers -5. But I hear you, Chris, on that. It could easily be a trap line. This Indiana team runs the ball. They play defense sometimes, depends on who they're playing, but they can probably play defense against Rutgers offense. It's not very electric. They could make it closer than maybe it should be, but at the end of the day, I think Rutgers is still going to cover this 5-point spread.
Yeah, I think it should be a very close game. I'm with Chris. It could be a trap game, like everybody's mentioned, but I think Rutgers, they've proven enough to me this year that I think they will cover. But I think I'm going to stay away, like Chris mentioned. It just, there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding this game. And I do not like that when I'm betting. So I think I'm gonna stay away from my Rutgers. They've been good to me this year. Let me down last week, but we're riding them for the rest of the year. I'm not
And
worried.
one thing with this
Yeah.
we forgot to mention, this is a rivalry game. Rutgers and Indiana hate each other just because they're both so irrelevant.
Really?
Yeah, because they're both incredibly irrelevant. Rutgers fans think they own it. It actually is a rivalry though. Indiana fans call them Rutger. They won't give them their S because they say they're not deserving of it. And then Rutgers just smacks up on them in basketball and football, probably in every other sport too. But Rutgers kind of owns them. They're going to keep the owning rolling this weekend.
Love it. Love it. So, Brent, you kind of mentioned it. This podcast has been pretty favorited towards the favorites, and we've been riding a lot of the hometown teams, and we got to see one of the bigger upsets last week. Wisconsin fell to Iowa, boys. Like that, none of us saw it coming. I can graciously say that we were all on Wisconsin, the Badger train. We thought this was going to be a very controlled game, and they stumbled. It is now Iowa's Western Conference to lose, the Big Ten West. Like, that is their conference to lose. But we have the Wisconsin Badgers going up to Illinois Champaign, and they are only a 2.5-point favorite. Chris, how do you feel about that?
I look at that and think of one thing: Mordecai out, done for the year. I think how that offense changed in the second half. Granted, they were terrible in the first half. I watched more of that game than I would have liked to. I know that was a big pick for us, and it was frustrating to watch. But the dynamic really did change with Mordecai leaving. That guy that came in to walk, that was his first time playing college football, I believe, like younger guy, and they really struggled to do anything offensively. Granted, I think Iowa has a decent defense, but Illinois is coming off another big upset. Last week they beat Maryland, and we had been hyping up Maryland a lot about how they were, a team that could be ranked and was really solid, and they were able to beat those guys. So I think you have a team that's coming off a big win, momentum swinging in one direction. You have another team that's lost their starting quarterback for the year and is struggling. I'm going to lean Illinois here at plus 2.5. I think at home, they're coming off a big win against Maryland. I didn't see enough from Wisconsin at all last week to want to jump back on that bandwagon. And Illinois, genuinely, they looked solid. So I do like them as home dogs, another home dog with Indiana. I like Illinois.
I love it. I love taking a dog. This show, we're all about taking those underdogs. 2.5 is, or excuse me. Yeah, no, yeah. 2.5. That's tight. That's a field goal. Brant, how do you feel about that line? Is it justified? Is it too low, too high? Where are you
I
at
think
this
it
game?
is. I think it is absolutely justified. No Tanner Mordecai is really the difference here. And is Tanner Mordecai a good quarterback? I wouldn't say that he is, but he's a veteran. He's capable. He's proven he can win at a lower level. He can at least manage the game. He at least did that for the first few games for Wisconsin. And Braden Law came in and just looked lost against Iowa. Granted, that is probably one of the better defenses in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
But I think Illinois has enough to get pressure on him. And Johnny Newton, Keith Randolph on the inside. You get the big boys chasing after Braden Locke, put some pressure on him. He's not going to know what to do with it. And if Champaign comes out bumping, which they should for this game by all means, this is a Big Ten West slugfest. Losers done for. And I know I mentioned that after Illinois got was it Purdue they got boat raced by earlier in the season? That's right. I said the loser of that game was out of Big Ten West contention, but baby, this is the Big Ten West. You never know what's going to happen. If Illinois can win this one, they can maybe sneak back into that championship game. They still have to play Iowa. So if they can win this one, they can keep the momentum going. And you know what? Keep the points. Don't need them. Illinois money line. They're beating Wisconsin this weekend. Promise you that.
Wow. That is bold. From our CEO, that is very, very bold. And Brant, I know we talked a little earlier in the season about the trenches at Illinois. We thought they would be stronger. They had a lot of returning players. But Brandon, I want to pose this to you. Do you think that Illinois can hold up against a team like Wisconsin in those trenches?
I'll say this, Brand, don't make promises you can't keep, man. Because although Wisconsin did lose Mordecai for the season, they're going to lean on that run game. I don't trust Altmaier to not turn the ball over 1 to 2 times against this Wisconsin team. We're on life support with the over for the win season, I will say. And this is going to be a shot of adrenaline for the rest of the season. We have a shot. We have life until this team loses 4 games. I think they get the job done in Champaign. Is that me being stupid? Could be. But I got to believe in these boys until the wheels fall off. They haven't fallen off just yet. Give me the Badgers.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to echo Brandon a bit. What I've grown up knowing about the Big Ten West, it is ground and pound, hard nose football, and I think Wisconsin has the edge in that specific region. I think they have 2 of the better backs within the Big Ten. I'm not saying they're the best. I think Penn State's very talented. Ohio State has a talented backfield. Michigan has a talented backfield, but they're up there. Braylon Allen is the real deal. And I think that Wisconsin still has the edge within the trenches, even if they're missing their quarterback. I know Tanner Mordecai is a big game changer in this game, but I still think that Luke Fickell will be able to get the job done. I don't know if I want the points. I think it's going to be close. But I think I'm going to have to side with Brandon. I think Wisconsin gets the job done in enemy territory up in Champaign this weekend. Now, moving on to the last of the unranked matchups, we have Northwestern visiting Nebraska. Not sure how many national viewers are going to be tuning into this outside of Illinois and Nebraska, the state of Nebraska. But we have Nebraska at minus 11.5. Brand, how do we feel about that? Who are you betting? Are you going to bet on this game or are you going to stay away?
Yeah, you said it's in Nebraska this weekend, right?
Yes, it is in Nebraska, minus 11.5. Big line for Northwestern, that feels like.
Yeah, it's a big line, but you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna keep drinking that Roulade. The Northwestern offense.
Golly, I feel like this podcast has had so much Roulade, we have to be hungover by now.
And no, I only drink it when it does me well. I promise you that. I fade Nebraska at the right times and I ride with them at the right times. And now is the time when you want to be hopping on the train. The Nebraska defense, for what it's worth, has actually not been a terrible unit this season. They've held teams to pretty limited scoring. And this Northwestern offense just hasn't shown me anything that makes me think they're gonna, put up enough points to cover that 11-point spread. Now, the Nebraska offense, on the other hand, they might only put up 13, but hey, 13-0 gets you that win. So give me Heinrich Harburg and the boys.
Very interesting. Brandon, with both teams being 3-3, does 11.5 scare you as a home favorite? Or do you feel confident in Nebraska this week? Because you have been one of the biggest participants. I don't want to call you out, but you love that Roulade, and I just want to hear your take this week.
I can't touch the spread, man. The Roulade, it has tasted pretty bitter to me this year. I don't know if I've won a single game drinking Roulade, but I don't trust the Nebraska offense enough. They could win this game 26-14, maybe. I don't know if this team's going to put up the points necessary to cover the spread, and the Roulade has not tasted very good. Give me another year or two, and I might be back on it. But I think we are finally weaned off totally from it. But I'm not touching this game. I don't like Northwestern, and the Roulade is now done. So,
yeah, no, I agree. Chris, any thoughts on this game? Are you placing a bet, or are you staying far away?
Kind of a yucky game. I agree with Brand's take on Nebraska. I think early season we talked a lot about Jeff Sims. He needs to fall till he's fallen off the depth chart, and now he has. So the team genuinely looks a little bit better with Harburg at quarterback. Ben Bryant for Northwestern, he was terrible at UC, and somehow he's worse at Northwestern. So I think that I do think Nebraska's the 11-point spread makes sense to me at home. I like Nebraska on that spread. That's what I would take there. As far as betting, I can't see myself touching this outside and maybe throwing the money line in a parlay. I don't see Nebraska losing this weekend at Northwestern. I think Northwestern's shining moment this year was that Minnesota game at home, and I don't know if they win another bowl game. So I do think Nebraska wins this game. I would lean for them to cover as well, but yeah, not one I'm super duper confident in.
Yeah. Anything over 10 in the Big Ten West is scary to me. Like there's no points that you can guarantee in that division. So I'm gonna stay far away from this one. I've had enough of the roulette this year. I will not be touching this game. Nebraska and Northwestern. Yep. That is one game that I will be bypassing, but we do have an interesting one. It is the late game. I know we usually do these in chronological order, but we're going to jump to the late game. Michigan visiting East Lansing. Now, typically, I would say this is one of the bigger rivalries within the Big Ten. Big brother, little brother, the state of Michigan is at stake. But the line is minus 24 for Michigan. Brandon, is this the year that Michigan just takes care of business?
Let's say with a resounding yes, Michigan is going to absolutely dominate this game. It's going to be chippy. It's going to be there might be a fight in this game in the stands, on the field. Night game does not happen with this rivalry often for a reason. Fans get all day to drink, and it's going to be a raucous, wild environment. But I think maybe about 6 minutes in, JJ finds someone in the end zone, shuts the crowd up a little bit, and Michigan does not look back. This team is just unbelievable this year so far. I know they have not faced anybody with a pulse yet, but Michigan State doesn't have a pulse. So I think this is going to be another beatdown. And there will be, not going to say there will be, but there might be some dirty cheap shots in the second half by some players because this is going to be ugly.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I think this year is one of the first years that I've seen that Michigan is just far and away more complete and better than Michigan State. I feel like typically this is usually a chippier game. It means a lot more. Michigan State always plays them very tightly and very close. I just don't think that it is going to be the same this year. I am on the same wavelength. I think possibly they may get through the first quarter. I think it might be tight. I think it'll be scrappy through the first, but once JJ and that offense gets clicking, I think they're going to run away with it and cover pretty easily. Chris, how are you feeling about this game?
Yeah, completely agree with you guys. Interesting note on this game, just as a thought bubble with playoff committee coming up and kind of seeding and stuff. Michigan State's the one team that's played Washington this year, and Washington obliterated those guys. And this is a chance now for Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State to have a like opponent with Washington. I think all three of them are going to be very motivated to blow these guys out too. They have to, because I think with how Washington looked, with how Penix looked, I remember saying that, Penix against that secondary was going to be such a huge mismatch. I think JJ against that secondary is going to be a ginormous mismatch as well. I think Michigan's really going to run this up. It's a rivalry game. They're going to want to get after these guys. So I'm pretty confident that Michigan comes out and covers this spread, and I will be betting it.
Love it. Brant, anything to add on this game? I feel like we've covered it pretty well.
No, but there's one big thing that we're missing.
What is that?
I'm really, really sad about this, but Jacoby Windman, linebacker for Michigan State, tore his pectoral in the Richmond game, which I'm sure not many people knew because no one's really following Michigan State that closely this year. Mm-hmm. But last season, he was a big, big factor in this game because he beat the shit out of some Michigan players in the tunnel afterwards. I really wanted to see him back on that field this year against those Michigan Wolverines and see what he could do on the field where you're allowed to maybe catch a domestic charge, because that would have been a lot of fun to see him kind of bring some ruckus, get a little revenge tour for him after he was ruled out for the rest of the season with a suspension. but unfortunately, he's going to be watching from the sidelines in this one. So without him, I really just think Michigan runs a train on him. It's not going to be close. Michigan State just doesn't have the firepower, and they've really just given up.
Yeah, totally agree. Moving on to the next game, 3:30 on NBC. We have the Minnesota Gophers. Feels like they're a pretty scrappy team this year. I
Yeah,
wouldn't say
they
they're
got
high
absolutely
caliber,
they got scrapped by Michigan.
but they are scrappy in winning games. And they're heading to face the Hawkeyes this weekend, ranked number 24. Iowa is favored by 3.5. Brant, I'm going to pose this to you because you have some closer connections to Iowa. How are you feeling about this game? Specifically, how are you feeling about Tyler Nubin sitting in that secondary?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one.
Especially with the backup. Cade's gone.
Yeah,
Can't remember the starting
before we get into
quarterback's name.
Tyler Newman, I just wanted to mention we thought we wouldn't see a lower over under than what we saw with Iowa, Wisconsin at 34. And here we are 1 week later with the line sitting at 31. And I will be pounding the under. I recommend that everyone into this does the same. There's just no possible way these two teams combine for 31 or more points. It's really, really tough to watch them both offensively. Going into Tyler Newman, he had that really big game against Jeff Sims week 1, and he kind of disappeared from the stat sheet after that. But he gets to go up against Deacon Hill, and this dude completes like 3 passes a game. He doesn't throw that many. He throws maybe 16, 17 a game. That's not a very good completion percentage regardless. I think he throws more completions to the defense than he does to the offense, and that could very well be said in this game. Tyler Newman's a ball hawk. He feasts on horrible quarterbacks, and he will probably be doing a lot of that this weekend against Deacon Hill and the Hawkeyes. That being said, I can't see Minnesota moving the ball whatsoever on this Iowa defense. We haven't seen too many teams be able to do that aside from maybe Penn State. Minnesota's not the team who's going to do it. I'm pretty confident in Iowa minus 3.5, even though this could easily be a game they win by a field goal. But I think with it being in Kinnick, they maybe win by 6.
Yeah, I definitely think home field advantage plays into this one. Neither team is a scoring offense, like you mentioned. But Chris, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this game.
Yeah, I like Iowa as well. I think the most glaring thing from the Iowa-Wisconsin game, and really kind of Iowa so far this season, is that team flips the field better than any team in college football. And the fact that they were able to punt, I mean, it was Wisconsin would punt at 40 yards, Iowa would punt at 55. And it's just when you're gaining 15 yards every time a change possession happens in these low-scoring games, that really matters, and that's going to impact the ability of Iowa to be able to eventually move down the field a little bit. I really don't think the new quarterback Hill is really that much of a downgrade from McNamara, which I feel like it's not saying a whole ton, but I feel like he genuinely he can throw a decent ball. His stats haven't been there yet, but I do think Iowa wins this and covers. I think that's a better team than they're getting credit for. I think the media has just kind of slammed that team and made it out to be like a big joke how bad their offense is, and they really haven't celebrated the strengths of how good the defense is, how good the punting is, and that is a team that should be able to beat up on a team like Minnesota that lost to Northwestern already and has got pounded by Michigan. So
yeah, no, the national media is definitely focusing more on the Brian Ferentz contract. 25 points a game. Brandon, we're gonna touch on that after we get Brandon's take. But Brandon, I'd just love to hear 3.5 in Kinnick. How you feeling about those Hawkeyes facing the Gophers?
I'm not going to be taking the spread. I promised myself I will not be taking any more Iowa spreads this year, no matter how low, no matter how high. I'm going to definitely be going with Brant and slamming the under. This is, I think, either the lowest or the second lowest total ever since bets started getting tracked for college football. And guess who was in the last game with the total being the lowest ever? Iowa. And the third to last, Iowa. And guess what? Both games went under by almost double digits. It's going to be this more of the same here. This will be like a 14-3 type ball game. This game's going to go under by miles.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I'm going to be taking the money line on this game. I think it could be a field goal game, like Brant mentioned. I do not love the 3.5. But Brant, just wanted to get a sneak peek into the future. If this is a big if Iowa is able to win out and make the Big Ten championship, does Brian Ferentz keep his job?
I think he absolutely does. I don't think that 25.
Even if he does not cover the 20, like if he's
he
at
won't be.
15 points a game, which he's
He-
not going to get close to the 25. I think we've established with this many games and he's that far under. But just how you're feeling, do you think they keep him?
Yeah, he'll be a lot closer to that 15-point threshold than the 25. But if you go 11-1 and you make the Big Ten championship, you don't even have to win it. Why are you making changes when you're getting it done? To the point that the Iowa program is pretty happy with and the fan base is happy with. I just can't see Kirk getting rid of his son if he puts together 11 wins in a season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think especially if they can do it with Deacon Hill, who's a backup, that speaks more to what they were able to do this season. So I'm on the train. I think if they get there, Brian Ferentz is safe. But we've all been waiting for it. It's the big game, big noon kickoff, Saturday. The Penn State Nittany Lions are traveling down to Columbus, Ohio, to face the Ohio State Buckeyes. I believe, let me check. The line right now actively is -4.5 in favor of Ohio State. Brendan, let's start with you. How do you feel about this game? Is the line fair? Do you think anybody is going to run away with the game?
I think the big word for me here is going to be adversity. Penn State this season has not faced any adversity to this point. They have not really played anybody yet. And if a game gets into the fourth quarter tight, is Aller going to be able to hold on with the pressure from the Ohio State fan base, the defensive line at Ohio State? Ohio State went into Notre Dame, got the win. They faced adversity against Maryland. This team has faced adversity, and they have come back from it, and they have shown that they can do it. Close game, fourth quarter. Penn State hasn't had that yet this season, and we know the Penn State games with Ohio State, they're up in the third quarter, they're up in the fourth quarter, but Ohio State always manages to come back and get it done. I don't think Penn State's going to be up in the third quarter. I don't think they're going to be up in the fourth quarter. This will be a tight game, but I think the adversity that Ohio State's faced this season is going to really benefit them late in the game, and I can't guarantee a cover here, but I would lean Ohio State -4.5.
Yeah, I think I agree. The big thing that I'll be watching, like you said, is Drew Aller facing this defense because, like you mentioned, the Ohio State went and faced Notre Dame, and you saw that defense against USC. They are a very good defense. So I'm going to be watching the young quarterbacks because I would not say that Kyle McCord is proven. He's won 1 to 2 really big games, but he's got to continue to do it if he's going to be at the helm at Ohio State. There's so many eyes, so many media outlets that are watching what's going on at Ohio State. Is Ryan Day going to be able to beat Jim Harbaugh? Like, there's so many narratives that surround Ohio State. I'm really going to be watching the younger quarterbacks at the helm because I think that's going to be the difference in the game this weekend. Obviously, defense is very good. Running back, I think Penn State honestly might have the edge in the running back room, but Ohio State by far has the better wide receiver room. So, like, it's really going to come down to defense and quarterback play. So I'm excited for this weekend. Going to be taking Ohio State, obviously. But, Chris, how are you feeling about this game heading into the weekend?
Yeah, super excited about this game. Definitely the best matchup we've had so far that we've talked about on this podcast. It's awesome for football games, and it is a shame that it's a noon kickoff. It's very frustrating as an Ohio State fan having these big games be played at noon where the crowd environment is very different in Columbus, where you have a lot older alumni. I don't know what the Scarlet Out's really going to even look like, but nonetheless, I think the Horseshoe is a tough place to play. It will not get the credit for that because it's not an SEC school, but it is a tough place to play. It's Lara's first big road game. I think it'll be interesting to see from Ohio State. Is Denzel Burke going to be able to suit up at corner? He got a little bit banged up, and Keandre Lambert-Smith for Penn State is a very good receiver. He's probably their only really elite receiver, but if Burke's out there, I'll feel much more comfortable with him being covered. This game's going to have maybe a chance of some icky weather, so we might see some rain. There's going to be wind gusts up to about 20, 25 miles per hour. I'm excited to see kind of how that affects things. I do think this Penn State defense is getting a little overrated. Again, they really have not played anybody this season, and they beat West Virginia, and that was probably the best offense they've faced. And outside of that, we've seen them face Illinois. We've seen them face Massachusetts. I'm excited to see them against an offense that does have NFL players on their team and not accountants. So I'm excited to see what they look like against some guys that are elite level athletes. I think if Egbuka's out there, that certainly helps Ohio State. If Henderson's out there, that certainly helps Ohio State. But I think at home, it's just hard for me to imagine Ohio State losing this deep into a year to an unexperienced Penn State team. I do like that 4.5 spread. I would also lean a little bit towards the under. I know I said Penn State's defense, I think, is a little underrated, but I also think that Ohio State's defense is better than it's been given credit for. I think in an icky, sloppy weather game, I could see Ohio State kind of taking a little bit of a lead and doing a better job of just kind of running out the clock and kind of almost being at similar play to how the Notre Dame Ohio State game was, with some just long possessions from both teams. I don't see like either team being super explosive in this weather. So I like the under 45 a lot as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's definitely going to be interesting with the weather. Brand, I kind of want to just bring up, I want to play devil advocate here. So in the past few years, Chris mentioned that the shoe, Ohio Stadium, is a tough place to play. And in the past 2 years, you've had the Oregon Ducks come in and beat Ohio State on their home turf. And then as recent as last year, we saw Michigan come in and beat the Buckeyes. Do you feel that this game is different? And if you do, in what ways? And then also after the fact, how do you feel about the game? With the line, the spread, and just going into everything Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, going off your first few questions, so those two games you mentioned, the Michigan game and the Oregon game over the past few years, were both noon kickoffs. The crowd was not as
Exactly.
electric.
That's what I like. The noon kickoffs, is it bad for Ohio State?
I think so. I think the shoe it's a tough environment. It's a really tough environment, but it is that much tougher if you play there at night because the crowd's rowdy, the crowd's electric, the crowd's alive. You get there at noon, it's not quite the same. And I know it's maybe for the Michigan game. The shoe's been
That's tradition.
Especially after losing the home
kickoff,
game.
that's tradition.
Yeah, the shoe's as loud as it ever gets during the Michigan game. But the Oregon game, it didn't feel the same being there. And
DJ's first game.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what it's going to be like for this Penn State game. I'm hoping it's going to be a great atmosphere. It should be a great atmosphere by all intents and purposes, but remains to be seen if maybe the crowd fizzles out if it's not going their way. As far as thoughts on the game, so Brandon, your word of the day was adversity. Love that. I'm with you there. My word of the day is actually something that Chris brought up. It's under. Put all of the money in your savings accounts and your stocks, unload the bonds, pound the under, because I promise you, and this is the second promise I've made on the show. This is a promise coming from the bottom of my heart and my soul and my bank account, my savings account. These teams will not clear that 45.5 point total. It just won't happen. Going to be sloppy weather. You've got inexperienced quarterbacks on both sides of the ball. Aller, who hasn't faced any adversity. McCord, who has faced only one game where he was really dealing with adversity, and that game was a 17-14 game, really played through defense. He only had to kind of step up on one drive. This game's going to be played through defense. Chris, that was a horrendous take, saying that Penn State has an overrated defense. I think hands down, this is the best defense in the nation, and it's not even close.
Nation.
I can't think of another team whose defense I would take over Penn State's defense.
Wow.
Even close, not even close. Not Georgia, not
wow.
Bama,
Michigan.
not Michigan. I'd take
You would
Penn State.
take Penn State's defense over Ohio State.
Absolutely. And I like Ohio State's defense, but I think Penn State just has less holes.
Wow.
At all four levels. I mean, these are NFL guys. That you've got guys in the secondary who will be drafted first round. Kalen King's the first rounder. You've got guys in the D line, Chop Robinson, Adisa Isaac, who are going first round. And then you've got linebackers who are criminally underrated. Curtis Jacobs is a beast. Abdul Carter is a future first rounder. They've got so much talent on that defense. And then a few last nuggets here for Ohio State. Emeka Ibuka was in a non-contact jersey today at practice. He was not really practicing with the team. Denzel Burke was nowhere to be seen at practice, so that's not good. And Marvin Harrison reportedly has an ankle injury unrelated to what he suffered against Maryland, which was that lower leg injury. So there's a new injury popping up for Marvin Harrison. Ibuka's definitely not full health and may not suit up. Burke is probably trending the wrong direction. At this time, all the running backs were practicing, so that's at least a good thing to kind of get that back because we were down to like our fourth or fifth guy. Well, not that it makes that much of a difference because it really doesn't. So before I really choose which way I'm leaning, Ohio State or Penn State with the points, I'm gonna have to see kind of what that injury report looks like right before the game. I like Ohio State -4.5. I don't think Drew Aller has the experience to deal with this defense, but if Denzel Burke is out, that could change a lot of things, and that's going to be really interesting to keep an eye on.
No, I agree. I think Denzel Burke has been the cornerstone of that defense, at least the back end. You saw him kind of emerge late last year, and he's really showed himself this year. But it's going to be interesting if any of the D lines are going to be able to get home, what this weather's going to be like. If it's passable, is it going to be windy? Is it just going to be run heavy? So I'm looking forward to this. I think it's going to be one of those Big Ten hard-nosed matchups like we've kind of been alluding to that we've seen in past years, but with the offensive West Coast spread it out, gunslinging offense, we haven't seen it as much. I think we're going to get to see it firsthand on Saturday. So I'm really pumped about it. We're running out of time. Any last thoughts for our viewers before we sign off?
All I got is OH, baby.
IO, baby. Looking forward to it.